So this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and we've really moved into a very beautiful place with Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mimran here. What he's coming to teach us is about the concept of silence. Now I mentioned, because to me I have to fit it together as a background in learning psychology. As I said, I mentioned that this is also the concept differently. It's really, really different here because we're talking about something spiritual of the Gestalt, which is the difference between the background in this case, which is nothing, and the foreground or the figure. So we always concentrate on the figure. So in the last shir of Rabbi Mimran, he got into the idea of the silence that surrounds us, or the space that surrounds us, which is basically empty, because only because of the emptiness can something appear. You have to think about this paradoxical, but the only way that something can appear or be, at which he uses the word manifest, can show itself, is in course relationship to something that's not there. In other words, nothing. It just stands out. So let's see what he says here. This is another drawer. This is part 14. Another doorway to true wisdom, which is silence. So this is something you could do all the time. He says, since your mouth from speech, I read it wrong, silence your mouth from speech, and your heart, meaning your mind, from contemplation. That's from the Sefer Yetzirah. Now he writes like this. Included in the basic idea of acquiring love is loving solitary meditation. Because when a man desires a love of company of other people, it's impossible for him to be attached. Now, I'm not sure that I understand this little idea. He says included in the basic idea of acquiring love. So why do we get to acquiring love? Is loving solitary meditation. Because when a man desires a love of company, in other words, of other people, it is impossible for him to be attached. Rabbi Yitzchak from Akko, blessed be he, wrote, the meditator wants to achieve this great level of meditation in order to wrest upon himself peace in his lifetime. Now, all of this, I'm not sure how it has to do with love. I don't think I really understand that. So let's go on and let's see what Rabbi Mimran said. Famous but not so well understood teaching was stated by a great sage in the Pirkei Avos. He gives us a site reference. All my life I have been brought up amongst the wisest of men, and did not find anything that benefited me more than silence. Similarly, it was stated by another sage who said, the greatest protection to wisdom is silence. Now, what does he mean by this? What is it about silence that makes it so powerful and effective? Now, the spiritual world is not separated from the manifested world, the one we are conscious of. It encompasses this world, but it is so well disguised that it is easily missed by people. Nevertheless, if you know where to look, you'll find it everywhere. The spiritual door, in other words, we live in a physical universe with many problems, and we concentrate on those things. But those things exist within a stage of silence. The spiritual door opens up at every moment. Do you hear the cars driving by? Are those people speaking in the distance? He says, now listen carefully. You can feel the presence of the unmanifested in that, can you? You say you can't? Look for it in the silence out of which the sounds come and to which they return. Pay more attention to the silence than to the sounds. That's very interesting. When you're talking to people and you want to be close to them, he says, listen to the spaces in between what they say. Because what they say can only be manifest in the background of silence. Paying attention to outer silence creates inner silence. The mind becomes still. A doorway is opening up. Every sound is born out of silence. Then it dies back into silence. And during its lifespan, that is the lifespan of the sound, it's surrounded by silence. Silence enables that sound to be. I guess it was like if you were in a place where there was constant noise. It would be very difficult to distinguish between what's going on at the constant noise or the loudness of the noise. But when it stops, you realize that it has a value only because of the fact that it's surrounded by silence, and it comes out of that silence, it manifests itself. The silence never manifests itself. It is an intrinsic but unmanifested part of every sound, every musical note, every song, every word. The spiritual world is present in this world as silence. All you have to do is pay attention to it. Even during a conversation, become conscious of the gaps between words, the brief silent intervals between sentences. As you do that, the dimension of stillness grows within you. You cannot pay attention to silence without simultaneously becoming still within. Silence without stillness within. You have entered into the hidden spiritual dimension. You connected to the realm of God. Big words. Paying attention, he writes in the blurb. I skipped some of this and we'll maybe read it again. Every sound is born out of silence, dies back into silence, and during its lifespan is surrounded by silence. Since silence enables the sound to be, it is an intrinsic but unmanifested part of every sound. So he's saying that if you have something which is manifest, in other words, it appears either as a thought or he says like a sound, its existence is because of what is not manifested in the background, that it comes out of it and it presents itself. But the spiritual aspect is the background. Every musical note, every song, every word, the spiritual world is present in this world, but as it's present as silence. All you have to do is pay attention to it. Even during a conversation, become conscious of the gaps between words, the belief that the brief silent intervals between sentences. As you do that, the dimension of stillness grows within you. You cannot pay attention to silence without simultaneously become still within. Silence without stillness within. You have entered into the hidden spiritual dimension. You are connected to the realm of God. And I said, paying attention to outer silence creates inner silence. Listen to the conversations. Listen to the gaps in the conversations. It's like they're manifest out of nothing. The mind becomes still. A doorway is opening up. This has been Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mimran. His book, The Ultimate Connection with God. Buy this book. This is Baruch Fleischman.